Welcome back to the Arbitrage.Run show with your host Donkey Teeth here and Kevin from Arbitrage Racing. What's happening, brother?
Hey, Donkey. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Oh, another beautiful week in ZED, huh?
Always. This one is fun. Winner take alls are back, so I know we're giving our thoughts on that in a bit. And we got a Maiden on the horizon, so exciting times.
Winner take all. I mean, I've seen a lot of people say this, but it is the ultimate roller coaster, right?
It really is. You have these. You kind of get to the same point you would be at with double ups, but it's a lot more tumultuous.
Yeah. So this week's show, we are going to talk about the new community Maiden voting options, kind of give our take on what those are, what we're voting for, and then we are going to talk a little bit more about the ZED Legends League that we're running. We've had a lot of interest in that, really excited about the community turnout, and it seems like a lot of people in the community are excited. And then we're going to talk a little bit about this week's tournament slate, assuming we have time. So let's get to it, huh?
Yeah, let's jump in.
All right. So here's the vote out on Twitter. Zed has posted the options for the community Maiden. They selected their four favorites. I, of course, voted for XP gains because this is the one that I submitted, Kevin. So spoiler alert, I have a little bit of preference towards option number one, XP gains. We got 1v1 knockouts. And then the big lead here for the variance versus stability format, winner take all, is in last place here. So there's 400 votes. I guess a decent turnout. There's still 3 days left to vote. Maybe we can pump up my option here on this stream, Kevin.
Yeah, I better hurry up. I think voting's going to close pretty soon.
It says 3 days. It says there's still 3 days.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see when they that might easily be a Twitter glitch because 3 days takes it pretty close to when this thing starts, and they still got to.
No, it's supposed to start a week from Sunday, I think. I think it was the 18th.
It is?
Yeah. I think that's a month from the last one.
Oh, who knew? Well, never mind. The Maiden isn't as close as I thought. This is not as exciting as times. That makes sense. That makes sense.
We may have said the 11th on the last show, but I'm pretty sure the 18th was the date.
I like the monthly cadence makes a lot of sense for Maidens, right? Like
you're not allowed to say cadence. It's a banned word.
Perfect cadence. So frequency, whatever, is about right because you reset every month. So you end up in these weird scenarios where you have like a loaded Maiden for one of them and then I have a dud of a Maiden for the other if you're doing it every other week or not on the monthly frequency. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think monthly makes sense. So I wrote this proposal out and I ran it by you. I think we may have tweaked it a little bit after I showed it to you. But it's a week long. I think if it's going once a month, I think a week long makes sense. Maybe you shoot shorter at like 3 to 5 days. I think 3 is maybe a little short if it's monthly. 4 to 5 days, I think would be the minimum that I would want it. 7, some people seem to think that's a little bit long, huh?
Yeah, and I think like this one makes sense. Like when you describe it, I think for a Twitter poll, it just seems overwhelming. Like you kind of read this and like it just seems like a lot to digest. You see 7 days, and it seems like a big investment in terms of the tournament. So I think for the people who want Maidens to be like the event and don't mind that or like thoroughly understand it, I think it's a good option. But I think for the casual Twitter voter, it just seems like a lot.
Yeah, I think that there is a lot left to be desired here with how that they kind of approach this. I don't know that Twitter poll is like the best method for voting on something like this because there's plenty of people in ZED that aren't on Twitter, right? Then they got to go create a Twitter account to be able to vote, and then you get this little graphic to explain. Like there's questions here on all of these formats, really. I think with this one, some clarification needed. Like just at first glance, I think a lot of people think that there's no like actual cash prize pool for this because it's called XP gains and it says 25 XP multipliers, but there's like no actual cash prizes listed here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't the case.
Yeah, definitely. I saw somebody comment on Twitter around like they didn't know. So of course you're not going to vote for the one that may not have cash prizes.
Right. I think that's the main question with this one. I've seen other people bring up the fact that they feel like with this proposal, like you can't miss a day, which I could see that kind of take. But the way that I was thinking about it when I laid it out, and you seem to agree with this, is that like, okay, you get 21 races, right? All of these formats would be 21. All of the qualifying races for this format would be 21 races or less. So one of those is the Griffin, right? So you got 20 more races to use strategically to try to accumulate the most XP that you can through the whole week. So one person might come out and say, I'm going to run, well, I guess you could run 15 races that first day, 16 races, all in this free Fibonacci, try to qualify for that. I don't know that there's an advantage to that, to be honest, because these would probably be average scoring, right, for 3 races. But maybe that's a strategy, right? You use all of them right away. You know that there's going to be volume there early, right? And you rack up this XP lead, and then everybody come chase you down, kind of a thing, right? I think if you qualify for one of these, right, there's going to be 25 XP multipliers. So on that first day you qualify and you go to the finals, you're going to rack up a huge XP lead that might be insurmountable. You might lock it in on the first day, right? And then you might not have to worry about racing the rest of the week. Or you might say, well, I got a stability horse, so I'm just going to race on this day 2, pity point day 4, these low stakes double ups, and then day 6, free pity point. And I'm going to use my 20 races there. Hopefully I qualify for one of those. Maybe you've got a variance horse, super variance horse, and you just want to focus on, I don't know, like paid is going to have slightly more XP gains, right? But theoretically, maybe there's a little bit more competition for those. So I think there's a lot of strategy here, and you don't necessarily have to like feel like you're tied to your computer racing 3 times a day every day. Because in fact, you're going to have to skip one of these days, even if you want to try to qualify every single day, right?
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense when you lay it out like that. Would the daily, in your vision, be just a 3 race qualification?
3, yeah. Well, best, not best of, right? So average scoring. So you could race 5, right? It just might not be advantageous. I see the way that I laid it out was for these dailies having similar number of qualifiers as that last maiden, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was super competitive, right? It was really difficult to qualify for that. So these dailies would be very difficult to qualify as I see it, which is why you qualify for one of those and get out of the first round even. You've probably locked in your spot because not that many horses are going to advance into the finals in those. So you could run, 6, and if you put up a nice number, still kind of qualify. But most likely it would probably be run 3 races and put up a good score and stop, right?
Yeah, I think so, because you're going to have the tournament races would count towards the 21 as well. So you'd want to cut it off as quick as possible. I mean, I think this would be a lot of fun when people understand it. It's almost like a maiden season. It feels like you're kind of going through a regular season, and then if you qualify. But I do think XP gain is an interesting metric to use in qualification. It brings in a bunch of interesting choices around, like, do you just go like hammer down the one you're best fit for? Do you try to go to tournament qualifying for all of them, because that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck XP wise? Or do you just focus on the paids because that's where you're going to get the most XP per race? A lot of interesting choices there. I think it is just like a little advanced for, like I said, for a Twitter poll or how they described it.
Yeah, and maybe it's a little too complicated, right? We both knew that kind of going in. When I pitched it to you, I'm like, I'm not sure if this is too complicated. That's definitely the thing. Like, maybe it just is a little bit too much. Maybe it would have been better as a 4-day thing, kind of set up like this. I wish that it was getting more votes just so we could try it out and then potentially refine it from there and move it down to 4 days or something like that. Or take that, this was another criticism that I saw, is that Maiden shouldn't involve paid racing and shouldn't require it. I guess I see it as it doesn't. It might not even be advantageous to run on those paid days anyway. We don't know how it all plays out. So I guess that I see that as kind of part of the game theory in this type of setup. At the same time, I do understand, right? Like, there are people that legitimately can't run in paid racing because of geo blocking. So like, if that was the optimal strategy, they aren't able to take advantage of it. So maybe there's something there to that.
You could do like a 4 or 5 day version of this, cut out paids, and then you have a pretty interesting, like, still free season, not as much. And you could still, I don't know, keep the 21 race. That seems to be they're locked in on that conditional thing, but 21 races over 5 days.
Might start to feel like a lot.
It does feel like a lot if you're doing, like, I guess this is basically just total XP. So you would want to run as many as possible, but I don't know if they can change that. Like, 21 seems like the place they've locked it. Like, could they do a less than 15 bracket? I don't know.
I mean, they can. I don't know if they have the time or resources to allocate to that, I suppose is the thing, right?
Yep.
So I think we've hit on everything with this. I guess I'll just say the final structure. I set it up as 6 gate races with the top 3 advancing because I felt like that kind of is the middle ground, right, between variance and stability. So it's not like too favorable to any type of archetype, right?
I think so. I mean, the challenge there is you like how many qualifiers would you envision for each? I know
Well, I
Ryan's
said
already going through
double.
that.
I kind of threw it out there as in the proposal as double what we had in the last one. So it would still be competitive, right? But not like crazy like that last one was.
Yeah. So I mean, if you do 48, I think 48 was the last one. That was too tight. Is that right?
Well, it was different for each class, right? I think class
True.
one was maybe 24, right?
Yeah. So say you want to double that, but doing the top 3 advanced in a 6 gate is basically like a double up advanced format. So if you have 96, then it's like 5 rounds, which just starts diluting that prize pool quite a bit. Um, So I don't know, like it's hard to go above 48 if you're doing half advance, right? Because you don't want more than 4, like a Sweet 16 version of a round. So you can maybe tweak it to like top 2 advance and make it bigger, or keep it at that 48 level and do half advance. It's just a give and take there.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've covered this pretty well. We gave it a
I
nice
think so.
spotlight here, trying to pump it up. Maybe we can get these numbers up. Like, who knows? Maybe it could make a comeback if everybody listening votes. But I think majority of the people listening probably already have voted. So, but if we could get it like as the like strong second place, then maybe they give it a shot like next time or something like that. I think it would be fun to try regardless. But let's move on to the next one, Kevin. So 1v1 knockouts. I didn't actually look at this one that close because it doesn't sound that fun to me. Like I like the ones that had more variety. So to me, it came down to kind of the variance versus
Mhm.
stability versus the XP gains. But let's do our best here to break it down. This would be a 1 day thing with 3 race qualifying. I don't hate that. You know, if we want to keep it short, I think 24 hours with 3 race requirements works. A little bit too random, in my opinion, right? Like uh, you want the higher end breeds to have at least a little bit of advantage. And I think 3 race qualifying is a little bit too random for me. Do you agree?
I mean, if you had, it's paid too as well as the other thing. This is only paid, so some of the negatives around that. It does seem like it's specifically geared to one type of horse. Maybe that's partly outweighed by it just being a fairly random sample of races um, and being paid. But 24 horses qualifying in a maiden is very tight, especially for some of those classes. So I think that's probably my big negative here. The actual like playoff format seems pretty fun, where you have these different groups. You kind of do a round robin, 1v1. Like that is a lot of fun. It's kind of like the same league aspect where you get some entertainment out of the actual bracket style. But yeah, I think the negatives are in the qualifying for me on this.
I agree. I mean, I don't know that you can do. I don't know this should be even an option because of the paid 1v1s. Like you're just going to exclude a whole segment of the user base that is geo blocked. I don't know about that.
This
And
is
then
where like it would be interesting if they were doing the every other week maidens and you have like a 1v1 knockout with the next one 2 weeks later being the variants, and then you have a maiden going every 2 weeks, but you have them alternating for the different types of horses.
yeah, that could work. The issue with 1v1 knockouts, right, is like I don't know that you can do it with free racing because they would fill so quick, right? Like it would just be like a
Chaos.
nightmare trying to get into races.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to knock anybody's ideas because I like the creativity. I generally like the idea. It's just I'm not sure that practically it works, at least at this stage of the game. Maybe it could work with sit and go type maiden.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a great tournament idea. I don't think it's a little too um, exclusive for what you want out of a maiden to like be something for everybody, right? But I think like Dan Shan could throw something together, or like maybe a sit and go strategy. This would be a very fun format for those 1v1 type horses.
Yeah. Moving on to the next one. This was the one that looks like it's likely going to win variance versus stability. I don't hate it. You know, this would be my second choice personally. It's 48 hours. It's 5 races required to qualify. I think, you see people like Dan. Dan tagged me in general Discord when the winner take all format is like by far and last because him and I have been having the conversation about whether the community wants winner take alls or not, because such a large segment of the community or the horse population can't really compete in winner take alls, right? And to say that this vote is like confirming his viewpoint is silly, right? Because there's other variables here, like 48 hours being the length of qualifying and 5 races. Like those types of things can disqualify a format immediately, right?
Yeah, it's definitely not a clean read, but hey, it's a read. I do think like that's a different discussion about winner take all. I think winner take all in these formats is a little better than just like general winner take all because you have pretty much all 3.0 horses in this, right? So they're all at least playing on the same variance ceiling. So it's a little better in a maiden than in general, I think. But you're exactly right. Like I think this one is probably the safe middle ground of all the options, right? It's a little something for everybody. It's a moderate amount of qualifying, a moderate amount of races being 5. So it's very attainable. And you're effectively having 2 maidens and going on at once, one for variance horses, one for the stability horses. The negative obviously being you'll be splitting the prize pool 50%, but it's a very like solid maiden for what we have learned and observed over the last 3 months or so with different formats. I think this is the safe option, and there's no surprise. This is the one that's winning.
Yeah, I guess to me, it comes down to that. It's like, it's a little bit vanilla. I appreciate it. It makes sense. It's easy to understand. It doesn't have, the complexity that it's hard to find that balance, right? Of too complex for it to be able to reach everybody in the community, which is what a maiden needs to do. It's just like, it doesn't feel like fresh, I guess is the word.
Yeah.
And that's not a knock on it, because that can be a good thing too, right?
It's like, I mean, it's vanilla ice cream, and then we've added some sprinkles to it, right? Like everybody likes vanilla, and now we kind of grew tired of vanilla, but now they spiced up a little bit, but it's still, I mean, a lot of the same we have seen. So it is good. I think it's better than we have seen previously. Good thought put into it, and I think this will be the maiden we have in 2 weeks.
You didn't vote for this. You didn't betray me and vote for this, did you?
No comment on that.
Son of a bitch. All right. So yeah, it's a good format. I don't have a whole lot of critique other than I really like the idea of getting all of these horses together in a some sort of format. Although I don't know that it really does make sense at the end of the day, right? Trying to kind of split the baby, right?
It's apples to oranges, right? I mean, it's almost, in some ways, it's the same thing as like having a marathoner try to run against a sprinter, right? Like it's just, there's not the same kind of horse. So you end up like, maybe like you could have a marathoner and a sprinter running in the mid, but it's the same thing with a stability horse and a variance horse. Like they're just not bred to do the same thing.
Yeah. Which the qualifying for mine addresses that.
Yes.
I'm not sure the finals does adequately, right? Because that's where we're kind of like trying to split the baby, and then it's like, it's not great for variance horses. It's not great for stability horses. It's good for these like probably like slightly more stability horses, I guess. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see, I guess, is my
top
take
3
on it.
advance is pretty favorable. Like top half advance is pretty favorable for stability.
But then
top 2 is the one where it's like probably the hybrid.
Yeah, because then I think top 3 advances as it was laid out works because advantageous for stability horses continuing to advance towards the finals, right? But advantageous for those variance horses to actually get first, which is going to have a bigger payout, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have multiple goals, which is the whole name of the game. That like of a successful game is you can have success measured by different variables.
Yeah. All right, let's all vote for mine. Come on, guys. Last one here, winner takes all. Yeah, so some major questions for me on this one, and I think like right out of the gates, the reason that this one is in last place is it's a week long and it's only 5 races. So like that's a long time and a lot of downtime for horses, right?
Yeah, the whole thing just seems a little disjointed. Like I think if winner take all maiden makes a lot of sense, but yeah, there's definitely some tweaks I think you could make. Yeah, the 1 week, I think 2 days, 5 races is probably the sweet spot there. But then like you have qualifying being what is like, I guess it's a subsidized qualifying. Is that how I read this? Where there's free races, but you actually can win a little bit?
Well, yeah, it's confusing, and this was my other issue with it. Is like, what does this mean? 12-gate double ups. What are you doubling up if it's free? You
I,
don't double up. So is the top 6 getting a micro prize pool? I don't
think
understand it.
I would guess it's like a $2 prize pool, and they want to like spread the wealth of the subsidizing, so they're making it a double up. But in reality, it's a top 3 scoring. So like for the overlay, they're giving it to the top half, but for the scoring and qualifying, it's actually a top 3. It's just once again kind of confusing, and I think that's ultimately why it's the 4th choice, not because necessarily people don't want to do a winner take all, but you run into the same issues as the 1v1. Like this is geared towards one type of horse, alienating the other types of horse. So it's no surprise that the more hybrid models are doing a little better. And then this one being a little disjointed in like the length of qualifying. I don't think people really realize what that micro prize pool meant. That might help it a bit.
Right, free money always helps, right?
It does. But I'm not surprised that this one is in last.
No, and yeah, part of it is the length of qualifying. I think part of it is just confusion. Um, so I think my suggestion here to Zed, and I will make this suggestion, is that if they do something like this again, I think a video needs to be released, whether it's Zed Pulse or Ryan recording another video with somebody else, right, explaining what actually each of these options are, and having that, you know, emailed out to everybody, or posted on the site so people can actually get the context behind these.
Yep. I agree.
All right. Well, that's the community Maiden. I love the idea of allowing the community to make these types of decisions and stuff like that. Maybe we can build off of this and execute it a little bit better in the future. And hopefully you all go out and vote for XP gains.
Yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction for sure. Love that they're taking the community's feedback. Can always improve, but they're definitely hearing what the community is saying and moving in the right direction, which is a plus.
Agreed. So let's talk about the Legends League now. So as I mentioned off the top, we've got some pretty good traction. Thank you to everybody that filled out our form. I guess I will put the form, the application into the Legends League in the description to this before we actually lock in our participants. But we're looking at probably doing 30 horses in each funnel. Looks like a solid number based on who applied. Majority of the horses that applied are going to get into this season. We've reached out to some people if there were issues with their horses, where we want to be transparent that like you probably shouldn't be entering a class 3 or 4 horse into this competition unless you just are truly a degenerate and really want to light your money on fire, or have this 1 in a 1,000 shot at winning this for the glory. But we have a good pool of horses. Majority are class 1, very highly leveled, right?
Yeah, I think they're pretty much class 1 or super high variants where they will have a shot being a class 2 type horse.
Still, the deck is probably stacked a little bit against them. But so yeah, I will put the form in there for anybody that hasn't seen it. Feel free to throw your horses in there. So still conceptual here, and we're working with Joe on ironing out everything here. I don't know exactly when week 1 is going to run. We're going to try to either get it out before that Maiden starts, or we're going to wait until after the Maiden, I think, to get week 1. So we'll see how quickly we can get the ball rolling here to get that all set up. I know Joe is working on some promotional stuff to really hype this thing up. I'm really excited about it. I know you are, Joe is, and I think a lot of the community is, because we see the potential for something like this to really blossom into something special and bring value to all of our horses, not just the horses in this, but if we're able to create this carrot of people coming in and seeing this league and seeing everybody excited about it as a goal, then suddenly there's a lot more value to leveling your horse up, right?
Yeah, it breaks up the monotony for sure. It adds maybe some like more exposure and glory for being one of the best horses. It adds some element of randomness because it is like a season, right? And we have it designed to make it a little. We're kind of balancing it out where we're going to have divisions based off how you performed the prior week. So it's a good balance of rewarding the best horses, giving everybody a chance as long as you are really like a class 1 type horse. So it's exciting. I know we're in the works of potentially adding some more like viewer friendly options as well, partnering with some of the wagering sites to see if we can get any any action on that. So that's a way where you may not have some skin in the game by owning a horse, but you could get some skin in the game and make it more fun to watch by using one of those sites.
Yeah, and so the idea here behind it, and why I think some people, there's a handful of people that are entering horses that are out leveled a little bit. They haven't been keeping up, which is one of the criticisms of this from some of the community members that would really love to participate, but they just haven't been keeping up with leveling. And their critique of leveling in general, right, is that now they got to go up against all these, 660 type horses, right? And their horses are back there down around 600 because they haven't been grinding every day. They have actual lives, unlike us. But some people are still entering those horses. There's a handful of them. And I don't think it's a terrible move, because the way that I see this, we're looking to build value out for these horses and potentially build this fantasy league and hopefully build this NFT based fantasy league where if your horse is in this, there's value to you where you could get a percentage of royalties on these NFT cards in our fantasy league that we eventually build out. So the horses that are entered into this are kind of grandfathered in. Now there's going to be a couple horses, and I've thrown out like 2 in each funnel type of thing, that get relegated from this first season, right? And they're out. Don't finish in the bottom 2 in your funnel in the final standings, or you've lost your grandfathered spot. And the way that I see it, we'll see how we set up the qualifying for those 2 spots in each funnel, but it's going to be tough to get in if you're not in this original season. So we appreciate you guys reaching out, and we do see you being rewarded by this long term. And people are going to want your spots, and you're not giving them up easily, right?
Yeah, really, the goal is to follow the whatever European football model, where you have promotion, relegation, and this being like the Premier League, and a carrot involved for lower horses who can try to qualify in. Maybe there's like a qualification bonus as well, but it works so well for soccer. So there's no reason why that football. Yeah. There's no reason why it can't work in this environment. And then who knows, maybe in the future you have a tournament where it's an unleveled tournament, right? And I know Zed's kind of backed away from that a little bit, but I don't see any harm in doing it every once in a while, and that would get the people who aren't grinders back in really quickly.
One question that we got here on this, Kevin, was doing it for lower classes, which I'm not opposed to if there's major demand. I think it makes a lot of sense in class 1, right? Because we can create a second qualifying league that we're talking about here, is like the future stars, right? And have it like, for horses, I guess any horse that's not in it could potentially try to qualify, right? And then give a free entry fee if you're one of those top 2 qualifiers that gets those spots from the relegated horses. You get a free entry. So it's not like, my horse is 590 and now I got no shot, but at least you got a free entry, and maybe you can hold your spot there for this season and keep leveling up while it's running, right?
Yeah, it's almost like you do like a satellite league where it's maybe $10 to enter, and there's 2 spots, and you have 20 horses vying for those 2 spots. Satellites work so well in like daily fantasy sports and poker, things like that. So the possibilities are endless in terms of the model.
Yeah, or it could be a massive league, right?
Good.
Where you get $10 in, you can win some prizes and make it last for a couple weeks type thing. I don't know. Still all very conceptual. And of course, we appreciate, we got a lot of feedback, good feedback from the community on that forum. So we appreciate all of that. We take it all in and digest it. I think there was some feedback about doing it shorter, at least for season 1, right? And doing like a 3-week regular season with each horse gets like 3 races for each of those 3 weeks, and then a 1-week playoff, which I think is probably a good suggestion. Let's test it out here for season 1, see how it goes, and then kind of iterate from there, right?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Give it a proof of concept. You want to have, I'd say 3 is probably as low as you'd want to go, just because you want like the spectacle of like it being a weekly event. But you're right. I think at some point we had thrown around like the idea of 6 and then 4, 3.
I think 10 was my original idea, but maybe down the road, we'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I agree with the sentiment of you want the first one to kind of be the proof of concept. Don't drag it on longer than it needs to be if it's not hyped up. And worst case is like people are wanting more out of that, and you can expand it for the next one.
Yeah. Anything else that we want to add here? I don't know if we're missing anything on this Legends League.
No, I'd comment we are participating. We have a few horses in each funnel. Any profits?
We limited ourselves to 3 in each funnel.
3 in each funnel, so we'll have 9. any profits we make will go entirely into the arbitrage fund in terms of what we'll use to futurely overlay tournaments we run.
On that topic, we should bring up Keith reached out to us after he finally watched our last show, and he wants to contribute some of his winnings from Master Fleet Special into the Arbitrage.Run community events fund. So he's going to match the 300 that I put in. So $600 is now sitting there in that fund. We'll see what we're going to end up doing with that. But yeah, just to echo what you said there, Kevin, we are going to put any profits, if we have any, hopefully, right? I feel like our horses are legends and they're going to show up for this, but we'll see. Anything can happen. But any of those profits that we do have will go into that. And then we should also mention that Zombie is going to lower his rake on this down to 10%, which seems reasonable here. So just so all of that is transparent from the start. And we don't know what the scoring format is going to be for this yet. I guess Wagme asked me when he was looking at entering horses. I said it'll probably be favorable to winners, right? This is a Champions League. It's about winning, but probably not like a keep on winning type degree, right?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like what is it? Top 3 scoring in 6-gate is a pretty good balance where it's like 10 points to win. Or does that keep on? I can't remember the scoring. It's like 5-3 for the top 2. Maybe we can do like 5-3-1 for the top 3. Still a work in progress, but I agree. I don't think you overweight winning like a keep on winning would, but winning matters at the end of the day in these premier events.
Yeah. And so they're going to be 6-gate. Again, maybe we go up to 36 if a bunch of people submit good horses here after listening to this show. But I think right now we're pretty set on 30 horses, which would be 5 6-gate heats each week.
Yep.
And again, to reiterate this concept, we're looking at seeding it. I think we're almost 100% locked in on using some sort of seeding or just straight seeding it. You know, each week the top 6 horses in the standings go up against each other in heat 1. Then the next 6 in the standings, heat 2, all the way down to the bottom 6. So theoretically, you have a bad week 1, you go up against the 6 weakest horses, theoretically, right? And you have a better chance to win that weekly prize in your race, and you got a better chance to move up the standings, right?
Yep, exactly. I kind of think of it as, I mean, there's been a ton of racing video games that do this, right? Like Mario Kart, if you're in first place, you kind of get targeted by some of the blue shells, right? Or
bananas.
There was an old NASCAR game showing my Americanness here, but there was a NASCAR game where if you were in last, you got like a boost, and almost like first place one's got a bit of a governor on it. So I think the concept works, but it's always the balance of like, you don't want to penalize the ones that are doing well a ton, but it does help to like leave an avenue of hope if you have a cold start.
Yeah, I think for week 1, Kevin, my proposal, we haven't even talked about this yet, would be to seed by level. So the top 6 levels are in heat 1, just to, from the start, give those people that entered lower level horses and decided to take the shot a better chance.
I think it's fine. If it doesn't happen week 1, it would happen week 2 with us doing it how we're doing it. So at some point, the top is going to face the top. And with 3 weeks, it'll probably happen either week 1 if you do it that way, or week 2 or 3 if we do it the other way.
I think doing it that way week 1 will start it off with an interesting mix, and you get a lower level horse up there at the top of the standings from the start, and then they're going to have to face off. Yeah, like you said, but still conceptual. Again, give us any feedback you got. We appreciate y'all working with us and collaborating on it and seeing how this is going to be awesome for the community long term.
Yeah, and I like the 6-gate a lot for this too, because that is the one where it favors, like it leaves the door open for stability horses a lot more than a 12-gate would be, right? If you have a 12-gate top 3 scoring, it's going to be variance horses that just dominate. But having half the field actually gives some of these more stable, really highly leveled horses a chance to win or come in second. So I do like the 6-gate format a lot for this.
Yeah, a stability horse, likely once they're in, is probably locked in. They're not going to finish in that bottom 2 and get relegated. So that's the other benefit. Okay. Anything else on this Legends League?
No, I'm good. Excited for it. Once again, I think we're shooting 2 to 3 weeks out on this. Either get it in before the Maiden or afterwards, which would be around 2 weeks from now.
Right before the Maiden would be like in the next week or so
That's
from the
aggressive.
show's
It's
release.
aggressive.
Yeah, yeah. So it'd be fun though if we could. If we could, we'll see. We'll see if we can get there. I mean, there's not that much left to do here, really, for us, right? I shouldn't speak for Joe. He's got to get
Yeah,
all the
Joe is just
leaderboards and all that stuff together. But
what day like of the week would we think about running this? I'm curious for the viewers' feedback as well. Like, is it better suited for like a Friday night? Are people so busy on Fridays that it's better just like shine up a Tuesday night when people are bored? I'm curious what you're thinking about what day of the week to do this on.
right, yeah. I mean, I think weekend is probably out, right? Just based on how racing volume dips and people seem to spend the weekends with families or doing other stuff typically, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it would either be like Sunday night to help fight off the Sunday scaries, or yeah, like a random weeknight.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll probably be doing live streams. So I don't know. Maybe our show gets cut short for a little bit as we test this out, and then we just move towards live streaming or something like that, and we can kind of talk about community topics on there, right?
Yeah, yep, love it.
Okay, let's go 5 more minutes here, Kevin. I know you got a hard stop here in 8 minutes, so let's shoot for 5 minutes here on this weekly tournament lineup. We talked about last week's lineup on last week's show, right? What are your takeaways from the adjustments that have been made by live ops on this week's tournament slate?
I think it's fun that they're trying new things. I mean, obviously, selfishly, we like the return of winner take all racing. I think there are types of horses that's best suited for. For a while, there weren't any of those races out there, so that definitely helps us. But I understand that there's some horses that are drawing dead in those as well, so they may not be the most popular. What is interesting is, I guess, two things. One, the open class, the high stakes $50 open class, maybe a little less popular than I was expecting. I'm not terribly surprised because I do think people kind of realize where their horse sits right now with the transparency of levels and things like that. But I was curious to see how much $10,000 in overlay would incentivize people to kind of run negative EV for a bit. So I think they will fill. Obviously, they're going to fill mostly with double ups. I think there's probably at least half of the races being run in that open format are double ups, as opposed to top three and winner take all. But I think it's a lot of fun when you add overlay in, and being best of. It does incentivize you to kind of keep going at it to maximize your chances of qualifying. So I like that. I think looping all three formats into one qualifying will naturally favor the mode that is being run the most, which is double up. But once again, I think that's okay. At least it gives winner take all and top two style horses a chance to qualify, and then they can always run a little negative in double ups if they want to have a chance to run. Because the way scoring format is set for qualifying, you do get rewarded for winning. So it's a decent balance, even though it slightly favors double ups. I think the actual tournament will favor the other types a little more. So I like it. I like the addition. I like the trying new things. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's working really well in the lower classes. I like the idea, like you, of the open class, and I'm not sure it's fully understood. At least I'm not sure we fully understand it either. But I think the idea is to try to draw those monster horses out of class one, right, and create a carrot to where you only want to race for this small, no, with this small number of horses over here for this large prize pool that is going to be broken up by a very small number of horses, right? Because there's this dead zone above 600 in class one, which is really difficult puzzle for them to solve. So if they're able to draw the best horses in the game out of class one, then it opens up opportunity for all of these other horses that have nowhere to race right now. I think, to me, and this is something that you said on last week's show, right? Adding another tier to class one and say it's like a $2.50 tier in these winner take alls. And then you've got, what are they $15 right now in the
Yep.
unconditional?
25.
25. So if you got those two tiers, whether it's 25 or 15 or whatever, and then you have to go to open class if you really want to race high stakes, I think that really opens up things more effectively for those horses around the, low 600s into the 620s type of a thing. Because, we're not going to be racing ready, set, boom in $2.50 races anymore with aging. So I think we've reached the point where aging has had the psychological effect to where we're going to be strategic, and other people with top horses in the game are going to be strategic on the dollar amounts that you enter. and all volume isn't just going to funnel to that lowest fee anymore. I don't know that it works like that in lower classes, but I think that that's a good solve for class 1.
Yeah, the other classes function better than class 1. There's not as the levels don't mean as much. There's not many extreme outliers that because it's just more capped. So I mean, I agree, especially if you're overlaying the high stakes one in the open class, if you're overlaying the $15, $25 higher stakes class 1 division with tournaments, and then you just have the $2.50 as like, hey, here's a fun way to run your horse. They're not overlaid, but you can run your horse, and because they're not overlaid, the beasts aren't going to run into them because other races are popping off and their aging is better fit elsewhere. Like that is where I think it will work, because I know we certainly would not be running our beasts in $2.50 now that they're in aging 2 or even 3 when there's overlaid tournaments and $15, $25 races are popping off.
The other thing here on the open class is it creates a little bit more class 1 incentive, right? Like if you see that they're handing out money at the top of class 1, right? Suddenly, I mean, people will say, and people love to say like feed the rich type stuff, right? But anybody could have taken a horse from day 1 and leveled it up to 665 right now and be competing in those. And you see that with a stable like Plotting and Trotting, right? He's grinded his ass off since day 1 of Racing 2.0, and he's got these mids that are right there at the top, and he's able to compete in those,
Yeah, it's really just you had to be dedicated and balled into like the XP grind. Now you're being rewarded for your loyalty to that. But yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely it's some feed the rich. Like if you had a higher starting level, it benefited you. But if you look at some of the horses that are at the top level now, it is not the horses that had the highest starting level at all.
The last thing that I want to say, because I know you got to run here in a minute, is one thing that I've noticed. I really like what they did with the 2.0 plus winner take all races, because now I'm seeing things differently. And I told you this, like I start digging in on these race fields on ZSim and looking at the horses, and there's a lot of 2.0s and 3.0s that have more variance than I thought. And I dug in and looked at the numbers, and no, it's not 1.0 level variance, but it's more than we thought. You had said on previous shows that you thought that Glorious Penguin had like the max for 2.0, 3.0, and there's a lot of horses with a little bit more. We're talking about 10 plus on ZSim standards over a large sample. So it starts to change my perception of what the issues with breeding 3.0 are. If we're able to breed that level variance, maybe it just the frequency of those outcomes need to be cranked up just a little bit. But I think it's more of a perception issue than reality. Like some of these horses legitimately could compete in lower stakes winner take all, or even medium stake, not against these 1.0 monsters, but it's there. It's there more than I thought. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean it's all relative. As like stability would be the same way if it was broken in 1.0. So yeah, you are naturally going to see like more for those horses. I think the ZSim digging you did was interesting. Now that some of those have a sample, I'm still skeptical it's going to hold above 10. Like I would take the under if we had to for that being like the actual cap. But we'll see. It's definitely higher than I thought. I was thinking it was like 8.5.
Oh yeah, Keith said the same thing. I was telling him my findings this morning actually, and I looked even further, and there's 17 horses with over 150 races and over a 10 on ZSim at one specific distance.
Yeah,
so
I think like 250 is the number where I trust it for variance horses. There's just a lot of variance with that, so you need a bigger sample. But I mean, it's definitely more. I would have guessed the number was 0 in terms of that. So we will see. Good find on your end. And
all right, we'll talk about this. We'll talk about this on next week's show a little bit more. I'll mark it down. I know you got to run, so let's wrap it up. Thanks for listening, everybody. Subscribe to the show. Give it a like. We appreciate you. Follow Kevin and myself out on Twitter. Our handles are there in the bottom. And we will catch you all next week. Later.
See you.